My girlfriend screamed, "You'll never be enough for me." So I quietly packed everything and left her speechless. Those words. I keep coming back to them even now, months later, sitting in my new apartment with a cup of coffee and a life I genuinely didn't think I'd have. You'd think words like that would destroy a person. And for about 30 seconds, they did. Then something shifted. Something clicked. And I realized those 7 words were actually the most honest thing Claire had said to me in over a year. My name is Daniel. I'm 29 years old. I work in project management for a mid-size logistics company. I'm not flashy. I'm not the kind of guy who walks into a room and commands it. I'm steady. Reliable. The kind of person who shows up on time, keeps his promises, and genuinely believes that consistency is its own kind of love language. For most of my life, I thought those were good things to be. Claire came into my life at a mutual friend's birthday party 3 years ago. She was one of those people who lights up every corner of a room without even trying. Funny. Sharp. Magnetic. She had this way of making you feel like you were the most interesting person she'd ever met, and in those early months, I believed it completely. We fell into each other fast and hard the way you do in your late 20s, when you're finally ready for something real. The first year was genuinely wonderful. I want to be fair to that. I want to be fair to who Claire was back then, because erasing the good parts would be dishonest, and this story, if it's going to mean anything, needs to be honest. We traveled to Porto in the spring. We spent a weekend in the mountains in November where it snowed unexpectedly, and we were completely unprepared and had to share one coat between us walking back to the car. She laughed so hard she cried. I've thought about that moment a lot since everything fell apart. How easy it was to be happy then. How little we needed. I met her family at Christmas that year. Her mother liked me. Her father shook my hand firmly and said, "Claire talks about you constantly." I went home that night feeling like I had somehow stepped into a version of my life that was better than the one I'd planned. We moved in together 8 months into the relationship. It felt fast to some people, but not to us. We had already spent more nights together than apart. The apartment was small, a 2-bedroom in a decent neighborhood, more my budget than hers, but she contributed what she could. We painted the kitchen yellow on a Sunday afternoon. She chose the color. I pretended to hate it. I actually loved it. Somewhere in year 2, things shifted. Not suddenly. The way a relationship deteriorates is almost never sudden. It's gradual. A degree at a time, like water getting colder so slowly you don't notice until you're genuinely freezing. The comments started small. We were watching a documentary about a self-made entrepreneur one evening and Claire said, almost offhandedly, "Imagine being that driven. Some people just have it." She wasn't looking at me when she said it. But I felt it. That small, targeted something in the words. A week later, at dinner with friends, someone asked what I was working on at my job. I started explaining a new system rollout I'd been managing, something I was genuinely proud of. Claire cut in, "He works in logistics." Just that. 2 words that collapsed 6 months of work into the most boring sentence possible. Our friends moved on. I sat there with my fork in my hand feeling about 2 inches tall. By month 18, there was a name. Marcus. Claire had started a new role at a marketing firm and Marcus was a colleague, brilliant, apparently, and never tired of showing it. Marcus had been to Bali. Marcus drove a Tesla. Marcus had invested early in something and made a significant return. Marcus got promoted twice in 1 year. I heard about Marcus so often that he began to feel like a presence in our apartment. A ghost made entirely of achievements I supposedly lacked. Marcus remembered his girlfriend's half-birthday, she told me once, with complete seriousness. He surprised her at work. I looked at her and said, "You've never told me your half-birthday." She looked away and said, "You never asked." I stopped sharing my wins at work because every win became a measuring contest I hadn't signed up for. I stopped suggesting restaurants because she'd mentioned somewhere Marcus had taken a date. I stopped feeling like myself in my own home. I was shrinking, quietly, slowly, the way a candle burns down without anyone watching. I told myself it was stress. Claire had high ambitions and a demanding job. I made excuses with the fluency of someone who had been practicing for a long time. I loved her. People who love each other go through rough patches. I read that somewhere. I believed it. Was a Tuesday. Ordinary in every way until it wasn't. I had gotten a promotion, a significant one. A senior management role I had been working toward for 2 full years. My director called me into his office at 4 p.m. and told me, and I sat there in that chair and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, pure uncomplicated pride. I left the office and immediately thought of Claire. I stopped at the florist on the way home. Tulips, her favorite. I picked up a bottle of wine from the good shelf, not the Tuesday night shelf. I had this whole image in my head of us at the kitchen table, the yellow kitchen, candles maybe, celebrating something that felt like momentum. I came through the door and she was on the couch. Feet tucked under her. Phone in hand. The TV on low in the background. She looked up when I came in and I could already tell from her expression that whatever energy I'd walked in with wasn't going to find a landing place. I put the tulips on the counter. I said, "I have news." She put her phone face down, which was actually something in those days. I said, "I got the promotion. Senior management. It's official." She looked at me for a moment. Then she said, "Oh." A pause. "Marcus got promoted to director last month. He's 27. Then she picked her phone back up. I stood there with the wine still in my hand and something inside me, something I had been carefully, stubbornly holding together for a very long time, simply let go. I set the wine on the counter next to the tulips. I walked to the couch and sat down across from her, on the coffee table, close enough that she had to look at me. I said very quietly, "Claire, do you want to be with me?" She put the phone down again. Her expression shifted, something complicated moved across it. And then, without looking away, she said, "Honestly, Daniel, you'll never be enough for me. You're comfortable. You're stable. But you're not exciting. You're not ambitious the way I need. You're just comfortable." I noticed she said, "comfortable" twice. Like it was the worst thing a person could be. She said it so calmly. Like she'd been composing it for months and had finally found the right moment. And she looked at me with this small, almost imperceptible smile, the kind that says, "Now you'll fight for me. Now you'll prove me wrong. Now I'll get the reaction I've been building toward." I sat with those words for a long moment. I let them land completely. And then I said, "You're right." She blinked. "You're absolutely right, Claire. I'm not enough for you. And if I'm being honest, you haven't been enough for me either. Not for a long time." I stood up. "I'm going to pack a bag. I'll be out within the hour." She followed me to the bedroom. The calm was gone now. She was talking fast, her voice pitched higher than usual. "Daniel, I didn't mean it like that. I was just venting. I was frustrated. Don't do this." I moved around her quietly, opening the wardrobe, taking the things I needed most. "You're overreacting," she said. "This is such an overreaction." I said nothing. Daniel, look at me." I looked at her. I said, "I heard everything you said. You meant it. It's okay that you meant it. But I'm not going to stay somewhere I've been told I'm not enough." She started crying then. I want to be honest about that too. The tears were real, I think. Or at least some of them were. But I had learned the hard way that real tears don't necessarily mean real change. I called my brother from the bathroom while I packed my toiletries. He answered on the second ring and I said, "I need a place tonight." He said, "On my way." That was it. No questions. That's the kind of brother he is. I came back into the living room. Claire was sitting on the couch again, but differently this time, smaller somehow. I set my key on the coffee table next to the tulips that nobody had put in water. I looked at her one more time. "Take care of yourself," I said. And I walked out. The messages started that night. First, "Are you seriously doing this?" Then by morning, "I can't believe you left over one conversation." By the end of the week, the tone had shifted entirely. "I've been struggling lately and I needed you and you abandoned me." I read all of them. I didn't reply to any. Not because I was playing games. I genuinely had nothing to say that would have been productive. I had spent 2 years trying to be heard in that relationship. The moment I finally stopped trying, she had a lot to say. Something unexpected happened in those first weeks without her. I started breathing differently. I don't know how else to describe it. The low-level anxiety I'd been carrying so long I'd stopped noticing it was simply gone. I slept deeply for the first time in months. I woke up in my brother's guest room on the third morning and lay there looking at the ceiling and felt nothing bad. Which sounds small unless you understand how rarely I'd felt nothing bad in the previous year. I went back to the gym. I started cooking again, properly, not just reheating things. I called friends I'd slowly disconnected from during the relationship, the way you do when you're managing someone else's emotional weather full-time. Every one of them picked up like no time had passed. That told me something too. A mutual friend reached out after 2 weeks to tell me Claire had been telling people I had a breakdown. That I was unstable. That she had to let me go for my own good. I sat with that information for a moment. And then I laughed. The first real full laugh I'd had in I couldn't remember how long. I started my senior management role 4 weeks after leaving. My director told me in my first week that he'd been watching my work for 18 months before offering me the position. That consistency and reliability were exactly what the team needed in leadership. I thought about the word, comfortable. The word that had been used against me like a weapon. And I thought, maybe comfortable in the right context is exactly what a leader is supposed to be. I found my own apartment 2 months after leaving. A 1-bedroom with big windows and a good kitchen. I did not paint it yellow. 3 months later, exactly 3 months, Claire texted for the last time. One message, I made a mistake. I miss you. Can we talk? I read it in the elevator on the way up to my apartment. I thought about the girl I'd met at that birthday party. I thought about Porto. I thought about the coat in the snow. And I typed back carefully, I genuinely wish you well, Claire. But that chapter is closed for me now. Then I put my phone in my pocket and went inside and made dinner. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't fighting for a relationship. It's having the clarity to recognize when staying is what's quietly destroying you. Daniel didn't argue. He didn't beg. He didn't perform. He just left. And in leaving, he found something he hadn't felt in years, himself. Fully, quietly, uncomplicatedly himself. If you're watching this and you've been made to feel like comfortable is an insult, I want you to sit with this story for a moment. Because the right person will never make you feel like your steadiness is a flaw. Drop a comment below. Have you ever been in a relationship that made you feel like you weren't enough? And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it right now. Hit that button and the bell icon. We post stories like this every single week, and I promise you, next week's is just as real, just as raw, and just as worth your time. If you're new here, subscribe before we get to part 3. Trust me, you don't want to miss what Daniel does next. Hit the bell so YouTube actually notifies you.